The kidnapping of Elizabeth Smart is one of the most well-known and harrowing abduction cases in modern American history. Elizabeth Smart, a 14-year-old girl from Salt Lake City, Utah, was abducted from her home in June 2002 and held captive for 9 months before being rescued. Her story is a tale of survival, resilience, and ultimately justice. In this video, we will explore the details of the kidnapping, the psychological manipulation Elizabeth endured, the investigation and search efforts, and her eventual rescue. It will also delve into the impact her story has had on public awareness and child abduction prevention. In the early hours of June 5, 2002, Elizabeth Smart was asleep in the bedroom she shared with her younger sister, Mary Catherine, in their family's home in Salt Lake City. At around 2 a.m., a man broke into the house through an open window, entered Elizabeth's bedroom, and woke her by holding a knife to her throat. He threatened to kill her and her family if she made any noise, leading her out of the house into the night. The kidnapper was Brian David Mitchell, a self-proclaimed prophet who called himself Emmanuel. Mitchell was a drifter with a long history of delusional behavior, particularly regarding religion. He had previously worked as a handyman at the Smart family's home, which gave him knowledge of the house's layout. Accompanying him in the abduction was his wife, Wanda Barzee, who also shared in Mitchell's religious extremism. Mitchell led Elizabeth to a campsite in the mountains near Salt Lake City, where he began a campaign of terror and psychological control. He declared that Elizabeth had been chosen to become his second wife, in accordance with what he claimed were spiritual revelations. Over the next 9 months, Elizabeth was subjected to continual abuse, including physical, emotional, and sexual violence. Throughout her captivity, Mitchell used several methods of psychological manipulation to control Elizabeth. One of the most significant was his religious rhetoric. Mitchell portrayed himself as a prophet sent by God to lead a chosen group of followers, and Elizabeth was meant to be his first recruit. He used this religious narrative to justify his actions, creating a twisted version of faith that was designed to manipulate and dominate her. Elizabeth, raised in a devout Mormon family, had a strong belief in God and spirituality. Mitchell exploited this by framing her abduction as part of a godly plan, attempting to make her believe that her only way of survival and redemption was through obedience to him. He told her that if she resisted or tried to escape, she would be responsible for her own death and the deaths of her family. In addition to the religious manipulation, Mitchell also isolated Elizabeth from the outside world, both physically and psychologically. Him and his wife, Barzee, frequently moved her to different locations, keeping her away from civilization and ensuring she was never alone. The isolation and constant fear of death left Elizabeth feeling trapped, confused, and unsure of how to resist. Mitchell's control over Elizabeth also included basic necessities like food and water, which he withheld as a means of punishment. This deprivation added to the physical and psychological toll of her captivity, making it even more difficult for her to attempt to escape. Despite the overwhelming circumstances, Elizabeth held on to hope. She later recounted that her love for her family and her faith were what sustained her through the darkest moments of her captivity. While she was often terrified, she also began to recognize that Mitchell was not the all-powerful figure he portrayed himself to be. She started to find small ways to resist his influence and maintain a sense of her own identity. In the immediate aftermath of Elizabeth's abduction, her family and the local community launched a massive search effort. The Smart family, devout Mormons who were well known in their community, were devastated by Elizabeth's disappearance. Her parents, Ed and Lois Smart, became highly visible public figures in the effort to bring her home. They worked closely with law enforcement and the media to keep Elizabeth's story in the public eye. Mary Catherine, Elizabeth's younger sister, had witnessed part of the abduction, but had initially been too terrified to fully understand what had happened. She remained quiet for months about the identity of the kidnapper, as her memory of the event was clouded by fear. However, several months into the investigation, Mary Catherine suddenly remembered that she had heard the voice of the man who took Elizabeth. She told her parents that she was certain the voice belonged to Brian David Mitchell, a man who had worked at their home. This revelation provided a critical lead, but Mitchell had already fled the area with Elizabeth and Barzee. Law enforcement officials were initially slow to connect Mitchell to the crime, partly due to his lack of a permanent address. It took several months before Mitchell was officially identified as a suspect, and by that time, he had moved with Elizabeth and Barzee to different locations across the western United States. Despite the time that had passed, the Smart family remained hopeful. They continued to work with law enforcement and the media, urging the public to stay vigilant and report any sightings of Elizabeth or her captors. The case received national media attention, and Elizabeth's photo was circulated widely. During her captivity, Elizabeth was moved between different locations, including remote campsites and various homes where Mitchell and Barzee squatted. The locations were often in rural or wilderness areas, making it difficult for Elizabeth to escape or even come into contact with other people. Mitchell and Barzee often covered Elizabeth in veils and heavy robes to keep her hidden. Mitchell, driven by his delusional religious beliefs, often claimed that God was instructing him on where to go and what to do. He subjected Elizabeth to frequent religious ceremonies, in which he reinforced his control over her, presenting himself as her spiritual leader and husband. The abuse she endured during this time was relentless, but Elizabeth later said that she never completely gave up hope that she would one day be reunited with her family. One of the most significant aspects of Elizabeth's captivity was the psychological toll it took on her. Mitchell and Barzee not only controlled her physically, but also worked to break down her sense of self. But Elizabeth found ways to retain her identity and sense of self-worth, even in the face of overwhelming abuse. These acts of mental resistance helped her survive the ordeal with her spirit intact. On March 12, 2003, after 9 months of captivity, Elizabeth Smart was rescued in Sandy, Utah, a suburb of Salt Lake City. The breakthrough came when Mitchell and Barzee, along with Elizabeth, were spotted walking down a street by a passerby who recognized Mitchell from media reports. The passerby called the police, who quickly responded and approached the group. At first, Mitchell and Barzee tried to deny their identities, claiming that Elizabeth was their daughter and that they were part of a religious group. Elizabeth herself was initially hesitant to reveal her identity, likely due to the intense psychological control Mitchell had gained over her during her captivity. After being pressed by police officers, she finally confirmed that she was Elizabeth Smart. Her rescue was met with widespread relief and celebration. The Smart family was overjoyed to be reunited with Elizabeth, who had been missing for nearly a year. Her survival was seen as nothing short of a miracle, given the horrors she had endured. Following Elizabeth's rescue, Brian David Mitchell and Wanda Barzee were arrested and charged with multiple crimes, including kidnapping, aggravated sexual assault, and burglary. Their trial became a drawn-out legal battle, largely due to questions about Mitchell's mental state and whether he was competent to stand trial. Mitchell consistently claimed that his actions were justified by his religious beliefs, insisting that he was following holy instructions. However, mental health evaluations painted a more complex picture of a man with delusions of magnificence and religious extremism, coupled with a history of violence and manipulation. For years, Mitchell's mental competency was debated in court, causing significant delays in the legal process. Wanda Barzee was sentenced to 15 years in prison after agreeing to a plea deal in which she admitted her role in the kidnapping and abuse of Elizabeth. Mitchell, on the other hand, was eventually found competent to stand trial and was convicted in 2010, 7 years later. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. After her ordeal, Elizabeth Smart became a powerful advocate for victims of kidnapping, sexual abuse, and exploitation. Despite the trauma she experienced, she has spoken openly about her abduction in interviews and documentaries. Elizabeth's courage in sharing her story has brought attention to the psychological and emotional impact of abduction and has helped to empower other survivors. Elizabeth also founded the Elizabeth Smart Foundation, which focuses on preventing future crimes against children and supporting victims of abuse. She has worked closely with organizations such as the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children to improve laws and public awareness regarding child abduction. Her advocacy has had a lasting impact on child safety in the United States. For example, the Amber Alert system, a message distributed to ask the public for help in finding abducted children, was expanded and improved after Elizabeth's abduction, ensuring that missing children can be located more quickly. She has also worked to improve recovery and support services for victims of similar crimes. The kidnapping of Elizabeth Smart was a deeply traumatic event, not only for her and her family, but also for the entire nation. Her case shed light on the complexities of trauma, the effects of psychological control, and the importance of law enforcement training and resources in solving abductions. Her family's persistence, the media's role in keeping her story alive, and the involvement of the community were all critical in ensuring her safe return. Today, Elizabeth Smart's story serves as a symbol of courage, showing that it is possible to survive and thrive after experiencing unimaginable horrors. Her journey from a frightened young girl abducted in the night to a confident advocate for survivors is a testament to the power of human resilience and the will to fight back against evil. Thank you for watching. Make sure to like and follow for more